Now it's time for a look at some of the day's business news. And France 24's Cole Stangler is with us. And as promised, Cole is starting with a look at what's been dubbed the European Super League. It's the breakaway football league and announced, as we told you at the top of the programme, by 12 of the world's biggest clubs. Some significant financial incentives here for the clubs involved, aren't there?
Yeah, that's right, Stuart. Those financial incentives appear to really be one of the driving factors behind this move. All the more enticing in a time when stadiums are closed, ticket revenues are falling, and these teams still have multi-million euro salaries to pay. The founders of the league say they're responding to the desires of the fans too, but also to that changing business landscape. Co-chairman of Manchester United, a key player in the Super League, saying the league could ensure, quote, increased financial support for the wider football pyramid. The league eventually aims for 15 founding members, with each of them getting a stake in that initial 3.5 billion euro grant. You see there the project backed by some 6 billion euros worth of financing from lender JP Morgan, though eventually the league would become self-sufficient, generating revenue from TV deals and sponsorships. According to a press release, the league would then distribute that cash to the clubs. These so-called solidarity payments would be worth more than 10 billion euros to start.
Wow, those numbers, I mean, they're much greater, aren't they, than what the clubs get under current European clubs?
Yeah, that's right. That upfront cash that we're talking about, available for teams that join the competition, will be worth more than 4 times what the winner of last year's Champions League took home. All that's driving owners to back the deal, but also generating pushback from fans. Supporters groups of the clubs involved have expressed disapproval. So have fans of smaller teams.
Of course, we don't like the idea. I think I speak for most Leicester fans as well. We don't like this. It seems like a lot of the big boys don't like the idea of smaller clubs great crashing their party and taking away some of their revenue, TV revenue. But I think hopefully other clubs will fight it. I don't know. We'll have to see on that one.
When you take a league and you make it a bit of a closed shop, it's just completely unfair. It defeats the point of competitive football. I don't think European clubs who have history in Europe should be able to rest on that history going forwards.
Let's take a look now at how markets are faring to kick off the week. European markets off to a fairly quiet start. The FTSE with some slight losses in London. The CAC 40 here in Paris up just over 0.1%. Some slight gains on the DAX over in Frankfurt. Asian markets in positive territory, though just barely on most of the indexes there. The Nikkei holding just about even. That's despite some encouraging data coming out of Japan, the country recording a higher than expected monthly growth in exports.
Now, finally, from Cole, the temperatures may be finally warming a little bit here in France. It's been freezing for the last few weeks. The fallout from this month's cold spell, well, it remains just as devastating for French farmers, doesn't it?
Yeah, over the weekend, Prime Minister Jean Castex as well, unveiling 1 billion euros worth of aid to try and help cushion the blow there. Agricultural unions warning France's vineyards could lose up to a third of production this year. Aaron Agunke has the details.
A sigh of relief for the French agricultural sector. The government has announced a massive aid plan for farmers and winemakers following the worst frost wave in decades. Prime Minister Jean Castex pledged more than 1 billion euros in assistance, including a 1-year exemption from Social Security contributions and emergency aid for the worst affected farmers. Arborists considered to be in a state of agricultural disaster will be paid 40% for their losses, the maximum permitted under EU laws. Agricultural unions have largely welcomed the plan, hailing the government's quick acknowledgement of the gravity of the situation.
These are positive steps with measures to help stimulate cash flow and funds dedicated specifically to compensating losses related to climate change, similar to the losses restaurants experienced because of COVID-19.
Sub-zero temperatures in early April ruined the 2021 harvest for farmers across the country. The survival of the business of this winemaker, who lost 80% of his crop, largely depends on the aid plan.
C'est un soulagement. Après, il faudra voir comment on peut être éligible si ce n'est pas des dossiers qui vont être trop compliqués à monter.
But for some, the government's announcement is insufficient. Following years of climate-related disasters, Anthony Oboussier had just invested 60,000 euros in anti-frost nets, though they weren't enough this year to prevent the cold temperatures from destroying his harvest.
Aujourd'hui, c'est 100% de perte à cause du gel. L'année passée, on avait déjà subi 2 gels au printemps qui avaient causé 80% de la perte de la production.
Losses nationwide amount to an estimated 3.5 billion euros.
And Stuart, one of the many reasons why this is so alarming for farmers, as we heard just there, they've been seeing an uptick in extreme weather over the last few years. It's not just 2021, and many fearing this is a sign of things to come getting worse even potentially with climate change.
Good friend of mine has lost 80% of his vines. He's right down in the south of France as well. So, yeah, not so good. Thanks very much, Cole. Carl Stangler with the business on France 24.